right, another edition of Tech on Ice with you. We're going to do part two of my getting into tech, getting started in tech series. So the first one, definitely take a look at it. I'll put a link to it in the description. Actually, I don't know if TikTok can do that. Never mind. Look at my previous videos. Yeah, look at my previous videos. So the first edition, we kind of talked about like the first thing that we should do when we want to get started, we want to think about maybe getting into tech, is like picking an area of tech that interests us and maybe starting focusing our learning there, right? So that's like the area. That area being if you want to build web apps, or if you want to build mobile apps, or you want to build apps that run on devices, or whatever, right? So like not just blindly saying like, oh, like I want to learn AI. Like I don't know if that's super valuable. It might be for some folks, but anyway. The second one I think is probably the most spicy of the steps you need to take. And that's like figuring out like what do you want your first programming language to be that you learn. Um, Obviously, tons of opinions on what the best language is for getting started. Some people will say Python, some people say JavaScript, some people will say C. That's a joke. No one will say C, but you get my point. Um, but I think, in my opinion, the the first part of this series leads into the second part of the series, being that based on what kind of apps or what kind of things you want to build with tech, could maybe lead the way to maybe the best languages for you to choose, the best frameworks for you to choose. Here's an example, right? Like maybe you want to learn how to build like apps, like Android apps or iOS apps, right? You know, you maybe you should learn Objective C or Swift or Java or C Sharp if you want to do like something with like Maui. Um, like that's an option, right? Like so figuring out like what languages are the quote unquote the best or prevalent that have lots of documentation and lots of learning opportunities for that particular type of app. Like if you're building web apps, like the world is wide open. It really is dependent, honestly, and this is kind of the next part of this is that like what language, after you kind of do a little bit of investigation, like what language like makes sense to you. Like I've been in tech for a long time, and some languages like I'll kind of look at the docs or I'll look at syntax and it just doesn't really make sense to me. Like there's weird symbols, maybe there's curly braces, maybe there's indenting that kind of drives everything, right? Some of that just might be something you don't like, right? And one thing that I'll say, I think I've even said this in my previous video, is that if you don't enjoy learning it, you will never learn it. It'll be very painful for you, and you know, there's enough pain in tech. Like I think that the thing that we fall back on always is like the programming language that we like and the things that we like to build. And for whatever reason, if you're not liking those things, like you gotta find a different avenue, my friend, because you're gonna be pretty bummed out. Um, I think once you've kind of figured out like what language you want, like then the next thing, unfortunately, is like okay, well, what framework do I use? Like if I want to build like web apps, like and I want to build them in JavaScript, like do I use you know Angular, React, Vue, Svelte, Ember? I'm missing some. There's 1,000 Next.js. I'm missing 1,000 of them, right? Like you need to kind of pick the flavor that makes the most sense to you. Maybe if you're building desktop apps, you're like, okay, I like React Native. Like, okay, that's cool. Um, but maybe you need to learn Java in some regards. Maybe you need to learn other things. If you're building back-end things, like, you know, do I want to build a Node app? Do I want to build a .NET app with C Sharp? Do I want to build an app in Go? Do I want to build something with Rust? Whatever, right? Um, like this is probably the most challenging step because there are so many options and so many opinions, and we've talked on this show Tech on Ice about religious zealotry around languages, right? Like your language probably isn't the best language for everybody. But when you're getting started, you really kind of have to put your foot in the sand and say, this is the language I'm going to commit to learning. And if you don't like it, it's okay. It's like, I want to be 100% clear. Like, if you don't like the language, I'm not saying you have to stick with it. But you need to give it a shot, right? Because I'll be honest, like, and we'll talk about this in the next video where we kind of talk about, like, like learn, like how do you get started in a learning journey. Like hello world is kind of the same everywhere, right? Like hello world in Python, hello world in .NET, hello world in JavaScript, hello world in Go. Yes, there's some differences, but like you're not learning a ton, right? So I think it's important to talk about picking the language or picking the framework that makes the most sense for you. Um, and that very well could be because, oh, we talked about step one. Step one, I want to build this kind of app. What language, like it kind of narrows the funnel a little bit, right? Because there are some languages you're not going to build web apps with that particular language, or you're not going to build mobile apps with that particular language. Maybe because you can't, maybe because it's a terrible idea, maybe just because reasons. But anyway, so that's this edition where we talk about like picking the language based on the decision that we made about what app do we want to build. So I hope you like this. Like as a part of this too, I'd love to learn like the people that are in tech. Like, what was the first language that you built with, and did you like it? And how long did you give it before you switched to a different language if you didn't like it? So comment down below that. I'd love to hear it. And obviously like and subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.